the difference between a user message and a system message. So, obviously we're talking about this within an AI agent. So what we have up here is a user message, which is just the source for a prompt. So when you open up ChatGPT and every time you talk to it, that is your user message. That's like what's triggering a response slash conversation. So that's the user message. And then down here, the system message that's kind of hidden. So like as you can see right here, if we start talking to this agent and I say, well, I got a connected brain, of course. So let me plug in G4O Mini. Actually, you know what? No, I want to use Flash. Um, yeah, let me just plug in Flash. Okay, there we go. So we've got that. And all we have here is the system, or sorry, the user message, not the system message. We don't see the system message right now. It's wrapped up. So just pretend this is ChatGPT, or I guess we're talking to Gemini. So I say hello. As you can see, I said hello with three L's, and we got back, hey, how can I help you today? And this is because the user message right here, as you can see, it's looking for JSON.chat input, which is coming from our chat trigger, and it is hello. So that's what we typed into the chat GPT window. Also keep in mind here, though, we're looking at the connected chat trigger node. And honestly, I wish they would just get rid of this because I see a lot of people get issues because they want to talk to this thing through Telegram or through whatever it is, and then it's still looking only in the connected chat trigger node. And it's basically locked to JSON.chat input. So we want to define it below, and this is best practice because you can still talk to it through JSON.chat input. So, I can still come in here and say, bye, and I wonder what it will say. Okay, bye. So it's still getting it, even though it's not looking in the connected chat trigger node because we define it below as JSON chat input. So that's the user message. It's the text window. It's how we're talking to it. It's the conversational flow. The system message, ChatGPT is obviously prompted. If you're doing a custom GPT, you've prompted it yourself potentially, or whoever built it. But now we open up the system message, which is in here. It's by default your helpful assistant. But this is how we change the behavior, right? So your helpful assistant, always use tons of emojis. Okay, so now it knows that's like its role, right? So we'll say hello again, and we'll get a response like, hello, emoji, how can I help you today? Emoji, let me know what you need, emoji. So that's how we were able to change the behavior, but the behavior is going to stay the same every time, even if we say something else. So like, tell me a joke. So it's still going to have those emojis because that's what we prompted it to do. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Hope you got a laugh. So that's too many emojis. This agent's annoying. Let's just get rid of that, right? No more system message about emojis. Ask for a joke, and we'll no longer get emojis. So yeah, that's obviously like a very high level what we're looking at, and like that you just map what comes in dynamically, right? So this is pretty much always going to be dynamic. And so when we get down to some sort of system prompt, like potentially in this one, right? What we're doing here is we have this long, okay, it's not too long, but we have a system prompt. And for the most part, this never changes. But in here is what's going to change every time because we're getting JSON.text. And so JSON.text, obviously we're defining that below. I'm going to pull up my Telegram. I don't think that this is shared, so I'm not sure if you guys can see my Telegram. But I'll hit test workflow, and I'll say, hey. So we'll get that message through, and we got a response in Telegram. As you can see, it came back and said, hello, how can I assist you? And it went down this path because it was a text rather than a voice. And so we're able to set the field as JSON.text because you may be seeing how there's two potential inputs, and we need to make sure that they're always being mapped as JSON.text. So regardless of if we talk to the Telegram or if we text it, the agent's still going to get it. So now I'm going to text it. I'm going to say, or I'm going to talk to it. Please tell me a joke. Fire that off, and it's going to come through in the voice now. It's getting transcribed, and the output of this is also JSON.text. So the agent is actually able to read it. Yeah, as you can see. So if we would have not set this as text right here, it would only be basically getting one path or the other. So we set it so that they're coming through consistently. And the joke we got back was, why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. So that's interesting. Even 4.0 and Gemini, when they're prompted to tell a joke, they give a very similar joke. Cool. So what else? Now, another thing to understand is when you're trying to figure out, okay, should something go in the system message or should it go in the user message? Now what's going on here is, I wonder if I have any executions. I made the travel agent in multiple different workflows. Any executions here? Okay, no. Anyways, what's going on here is you need to figure out what goes in the system message and what goes in the user message. So the general rule of thumb is, because this is defining behavior, when you're working a job, your behavior and your instructions and your role is always pretty much the same on a day-to-day basis. I mean, that's not like a black and white statement. But typically you have the same role, right? So this agent's role is always to write an email in this format with these HTML tags with this sign off, right? But what differs based on the output is the input. So typically when you're getting different inputs that you want to map dynamically, that's where you want to throw it in the user message, the actual prompt. So in here, as you can see, this is a great example because we're throwing in a ton of different stuff. We're throwing in information about flights, resorts, and information about activities. So if you haven't seen this video, I made a YouTube video about it, Voice Travel Agent. And then I also made a step-by-step in this community, which you can go find and watch if you want to. But we just, obviously, it was kind of a pain to map all this kind of stuff. But you wouldn't want to be mapping dynamic variables in your system message because that's going to change the way it acts. Now, there's an interesting concept of actually dynamic prompting, which would be maybe in here, because we have the element of making this an expression. Maybe you're dynamically pulling in your prompts from like an Airtable base so that a user can go in there and tweak the prompts without ever having to look within, what's the word I'm looking for? Within your edited environment if they're not techie. So that's a cool workaround, and that's also how you could introduce dynamic prompts. You could even have agents editing that kind of stuff, but that's a whole different video, right? Basically what I wanted to talk about was, I see sometimes people put dynamic variables that are coming through as inputs into the system message. I would stay away from that. Dynamic stuff goes in here. System prompt rules go in here. So, yeah, and like you have to understand what to map in. So let's say the input was email. So let's say we wanted to trigger this with a with Gmail, right? So let me grab a trigger on message received. We'll fetch a test event. Here we have an email. I don't really know what this is, but either way, let's say we wanted this agent to be triggered by email. We just have to figure out, okay, as you can see, this is undefined. There's no longer a field called chat input. So what we would do is we'd look over here in the schema and we would find out, okay, so there's the subject of the email. There's the from. Here's the snippet of the actual email, and it's because we simplified it. So if I unsimplify, we'll no longer get snippet. What we'll get is like raw text, so we get a lot more back. So here's the actual text of that email, right? And so maybe that's what we want to map as the input for the user, for the email to respond to, the agent to respond to. Because we'd say, hey, you're an email assistant, you're going to get incoming emails. That's another great point that I didn't bring up, is a lot of times I will say like what you're going to get differently every time. So in this case, I said, you're an email expert. Your job is to output blah, blah, blah. You will receive information about a vacation plan, break it into 3 sections: flights, resorts, activities. So I'm telling it what it's going to receive. A lot of times I'll say like, you'll receive a query from the user that you need to respond to. In this case, I'd say like, you will receive an email to respond to. And then it's looking in here as like, this is the dynamic thing that I'm going to receive. I understand what I'm going to get, and I understand what I need to do with it. So in here, I would probably try to find the actual text content, which would be, looks like this is like the actual text of the email. So it's not a great example, but this is where it could say like, hey, are we all set for the meeting tomorrow? And then this is where it would come through right here. Are we all set for the meeting tomorrow? The agent would take action. So there's obviously something like that. Let's say it was, I do Telegram a lot, but let's say we're pulling up Telegram, trigger on message, test event, pull up Telegram, hey there. And then we just see that this comes back as text, and we're able to feed this into the agent to respond to. Of course, it's not going to be json.from.text. We're pulling in json.message.text. So now it's getting that, it's green, and it's responding. So please paste the email you'd like me to respond, because it thinks that's what it has to do. So that's how the system prompt here is affecting this, even though you would think like, right? So it thinks it's going to receive an email and it thinks it needs to respond to it. So that's why it said this. we get rid of system prompt, we hit test step, it's just going to say hey back, right? So, hey, how can I help you? So cool. Important things to understand. Hope that makes more sense. Thanks, guys.